I was 13 years old and already in love with the cinema. When I watched Gladiator, my heart skipped a bit as it was bigger than my soul could take. I was so deeply impressed that I immediately put a Gladiator movie poster on my wall. I think Gladiator is one of the biggest epic stories of cinema history. What was so unique about Gladiator? And can the second one live up to its legacy? In the first movie, we follow the story of Maximus, Rome's greatest general, as he sought revenge for his murdered family. Maximus was already a respected general. However, despite his reputation, he still had to prove himself to gain the respect of other fighters, both before and after stepping into the arena as a gladiator. Since his battlefield experience was still fresh, it wasn't so difficult for him to showcase his commanding skills. While Russell Crowe's portrayal of Maximus shone as a heroic lead, Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus stood out as a remarkable anti-hero. As a son who was never loved or appreciated by his father, Commodus's cruelty, wrapped in vulnerability, turned him into an incredibly successful villain. Yes, he was ruthless, and yes, he was unloved by everyone, but he was feared extraordinarily. Realizing that he couldn't derive power from love to solidify his rule, he turned to fear. He had murdered his father and ordered the killing of Maximus and his family, the very man his father loved like a son and had offered the throne to. That's why no one dared to stand against him on the throne. Maximus, who was against Commodus, was the complete opposite. A man who knew what it meant to love and be loved. Maximus was deeply loved by both Commodus's father and sister, and he had a family he was willing to risk everything to avenge. Though Maximus' story was crafted as that of a general, willing to sacrifice himself for the values of Rome, it ultimately represented love standing against fear and honor standing against power. At the end of the movie, there was a great battle, a great finale, death but with honor. For a dream, for love. When Maximus died, we all cried for him because we already felt so much connected to him and to his story arc. That's the reason Gladiator was an epic story. Looking at Gladiator 2, it's not so easy to pinpoint where our hero's anger originates. Understanding the values represented by both our protagonist Hanno and his enemies is equally challenging. At first, Hanno identifies General Acusius, a Roman army commander who killed his wife as his enemy. However, Acusius turns out to be merely a subordinate following orders. While Acusius might symbolize Rome's destructive power, he doesn't seem to hold much say in decision-making. Eventually, during their fight, Hanno recognizes Acusius as an honorable Roman soldier and decides not to kill him. Also, on a side note, why does Pedro Pascal always seem to meet the same fate in fight scenes? Someone please protect him next time. Back to Hanno. We later discover his true anger is directed at his mother, who sent him away. But they reconcile too, and his rage somehow transforms into compassion. How does that even happen? Meanwhile, he never truly opposes the co-emperors, the very figures responsible for all the values he hates about Rome. Towards the end of his story, his initial supporter Macrinus emerges as his main enemy. But if anyone can explain Macrinus' motivation for ruling Rome, I'd love to hear that. Hanno at the start draws the roots of his anger from love and affection to his wife. Yet there is no substantial evidence of the deep love he supposedly shared with his murdered wife. Yes, we didn't get to know Maximus' family in detail either. But from the outset, we knew he fought to reunite with them and understood his deep feelings for them. Now let's examine the source of Hanno's strength, as he becomes Lucius, the illegitimate son of Maximus. At one point, Hanno begins to draw inspiration from Maximus' heroism, a man he once admired from afar and later learned that he was his father. However, it's unclear when he had the opportunity to truly embrace his father's legacy. The only plausible explanation here seems to be DNA and genetics, honestly. By the end, Hanno suddenly decides to adopt his grandfather's vision of a democratic, egalitarian Rome. But didn't he curse even the founding mythology of the empire when he first returned to Rome? Later, Macrinus becomes a sole obstacle to Hanno's dream of transforming Rome into an egalitarian and democratic empire. Yet somehow, Macrinus goes from a slave trader to one of Rome's most powerful figures overnight. The speed he evolves into a character capable of opposing such an ideal is truly dizzying. If the film's entire point is to envision a Rome built on equality, shouldn't the rightful ruler be someone like Macrinus instead of a Roman prince? It's hard to understand how Macrinus, in a West Empire filled with political gossiping and manipulation, masterminds an elaborate plan by himself, deceiving senators, trapping Marcus Aurelius' daughter, pitting two emperors against each other, orchestrating the murder of one by the other, subjugating the Senate and nearly ruling Rome. In Game of Thrones, even Joffrey, as impulsive and naive as he was, faced countless traps and schemes from those trying to control him. After all, he was a ruler, and breaking his ego and hold on power wasn't so straightforward. Before Macrinus entered the picture, didn't the emperors Geta and Caracalla have any advisors, trustworthy guards, or mentors in mighty Rome? And how does a gladiator's rebellion in the Colosseum suddenly spark an empire-wide uprising overnight? I can't wrap my head around that either. Even for Maximus, who was a respected general, it was difficult to own enough power to lead an uprising. And this is where the movie's weakest link lies. How Hanno transforms into Lucius Verus Aurelius and wins over the people's admiration through just a few fights. In the first movie, Maximus transitioned from a commander to a gladiator, a fall from a highly esteemed position to a socially degrading one. However, in making this transition, Maximus filled the gladiator role with honor and dignity. He didn't degrade himself, instead he elevated a role considered lowly. Becoming Rome's heir and transforming into a prince of empire, however, requires far more heroic acts than just winning few fights or leading blood-soaked spectacles in the Colosseum. Maximus had a history filled with such heroic actions and respect. All he had to do was remind people of it on a smaller scale. This is why Gladiator 2 remains a mere shadow of its former movie, full of gaps and shortcomings. Even the best quotes in the film are borrowed from the first. The moments that gave me chills were references to the original movie. The first film, with its music, story, and the values it represented, was an epic masterpiece. Gladiator 2 was Ridley Scott's 24-year-long dream. After killing off Maximus in the first film, he struggled with how to continue the story. At one point, he even considered a fantasy script by Nick Cave involving Maximus traveling through time. I must admit, returning to ancient Rome is delightful in itself, and the performances are fantastic. Cinema is a remarkable art form, if only because it allowed Ridley Scott to realize a dream he held on to for 24 years. But can this film inspire 13-year-old girls to dream about cinema? I'm not so sure.